Hey, what's going on, guys? Hope you all had great weeks, enjoyed yourself, worked hard, indulged in something. But topic of this week's video, completely non-technical. This is non-technical in its entirety, but we're going to talk about the meaning of software and life. Before we get into it, wanted to make a couple quick announcements. I really care about this YouTube channel. Everyone that's watching, thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate all the kind words. I'm trying my best to do at least one video a week as consistently as possible, but there's some weekends that it's just really hard for me to make a video, and I'm getting a little more caught up recently. So last week I missed one weekend's video. Next week I'm traveling, so I'm gonna miss that week's video, but just wanted to let everyone know that I really care about this channel, all of you guys, and I'm trying my best to do videos consistently. Next quick announcement, just wanted to make. The people at Code Addicts were nice enough to send me this free t-shirt. Not getting paid whatsoever to wear this t-shirt, just thought it was a cool t-shirt, and I also love Stack Overflow and Star Wars, so they were nice enough to send me the free t-shirt. They also sent a discount code. I'll put a link to their website, but this is not a sponsored video at all. I'm just giving them a quick shout out because it's a cool t-shirt. All right, that's it for the announcements, and let's just get straight into the video. There's a lot of people right now, even the media, just people talking about it, but they're making software sound a little more sexy than it really is. And don't get me wrong, I do software. That's what I do almost every single day. That's what I plan to do for the near future, and I don't want to dismiss it in any way, but I do believe it's being hyped a little too much, and I just want to put it back into perspective. So the purpose of this video is just to provide, in my opinion, a really practical and general and just, realistic perspective of software without so much glamour in it. All right, it's not going to empower your life, make you amazing. Software is software. It's like a job, right? So we just want to talk about it from a very practical perspective, and that's the purpose of this video. All right, so I have 4 major points we're going to talk through today. Hopefully they're helpful, and let's do it. Point number 1, let's just talk about the big picture purpose. What is the whole point behind writing software, and why do people do it? There are a ton of different software developer jobs out there, job types of developers. There's infinite possibilities. I tried my best to just put it under 3 major categories. The first category is pretty easy. It's what most people do, is you write software to make money for a business, right? Your software, you're working at a company, it's going to a product or service that you're gonna sell or give to someone. That's probably the most common type of software. Second, software could be used for more academic purposes. Think about researchers that work at universities or establishments at big companies, research establishments. Money is not really an issue, and they're writing software, working on tech to push the envelope for discovery. And third, last but not least, is just using software to make a world a better place. So I just listed everything, right? I just literally, these 3 things probably capture everything under the sun, and why would that even be helpful? But the major point that I want to bring for this part of the video is that the reason why people write software is not for a technical reason. It's always for a human reason. Let's just take a couple quick examples, all right? If you ever met an entrepreneur or someone starting a company, they're not really passionate about the software. They're passionate about their company, and they're using software to get to their end goal, right? If you're passionate about gaming, you love video games, you're gonna write software to make a game. If you're really charitable, you might use software to help developing countries. None of us, very few of us, write pure software because we just love looking at lines of code. There's always something more human driving everyone in any position. All right, so that's the main point of point number 1, and that's kind of like the underlying reason why everyone toils and spends their time writing code. There's always a human reason, because we're all human. Point number two that I want to talk about is, why is software so hard? The major reason why it's so hard is because it's so subjective. There's a billion possible things to do, and there's a billion ways to do it, right? So billion times a billion things, it's just too many things. It's like overload sometimes. One important point I wanted to address is that many people get very upset when we label software developers as engineers. A lot of people don't think software development is real engineering, and I'm going to explain why. I use these words interchangeably. I don't really care. I think the word engineer now is pretty much, you can refer to a software developer as an engineer. It's not the purest definition, but these days, all the big companies do it. I've looked at the titles of all the big companies and everyone uses the word engineer. So personally, I interchange those words. I really don't think it's a big deal. And if it really bothers you, that's too bad. But for everyone else, I'm going to explain why some people get upset about this. An engineer, the conventional definition of an engineer is someone who can implement and build something with a very specific goal and specification. Think about an engineer that works on an engine for a car or an engine for a rocket, right? There's certain laws of physics and they have to abide to science and really build something that just works and can send a rocket into space. Or you can think about architecture. Think about the engineers that work with architects. A bridge has to support a certain amount of weight. It has to allow wind to pass through the tunnels. All very specific things that must be accomplished. I hope you guys are getting the drift with these examples, but that's kind of like what pure engineering is. It's very well specified and there's usually like tight patterns to do something, right? You have a blueprint to build a building and engineers are gonna build it. So let's come back to our original question. The original question we had was, why do some people not like calling software developers engineers? Well, the main reason behind this is that software development is so subjective. It's not like pure engineering where there's really physics, science, rules of the universe to follow. Engineering in the software land is completely subjective, right? There's a billion ways to do things. For all of you guys, you and me who are in software, we know how much it changes and it's flux, right? Throughout the lifespan of a project, the requirements are always changing. They're always changing, and then how you implement it is also always changing. It's not like we have a blueprint to a building and we'll just get it done in 2 years, but software is insanely flexible, and that's why it's a little different from pure engineering, science. These names are interchangeable for me. I will call software developers engineers. I don't really care. I think these days it's widely accepted, but there is a kind of difference in what pure engineering is and software development. Software development is so very subjective, and there's so many billions of ways to do things in software that many people don't consider it real engineering. Next, I want to talk about what makes software enjoyable, and then after we're done this section, we're going to talk about what makes software a pain in the ass. All right, but for now, we're going to stay happy and talk about why do people like doing this. As always, I'm going to try to just break this down into 2 simple categories. But first is really easy. If you're working on something you actually care about, it's going to be enjoyable. If you really care about education and you're working on the next generation education technology platform, it's going to be enjoyable for you because you care. A second way that makes it enjoyable is that the software and coding environment you're in is actually very pleasant. So what do we mean by that? If you're working in a well thought out code base, it's maintained by people who care, people follow patterns, nothing is so insane. So if you're actually working in a coding environment that's nice, comfortable, then that's also something that makes software very enjoyable. Obviously, this is much easier said than done, right? Because if you've seen enough software projects, you know that there's just like shitty code everywhere. And it's very rare when you're like, oh wow, that was written really well. It all comes down to really just one thing. If the project, code base, or system, whatever, if you're working in some environment, the one way that it's enjoyable is that it's written by people who actually care about the code. That's all it comes down to, all right? If people that write and maintain the code base actually care about it, it's going to be a good place to work. And once people stop caring, it's going to be fourth and last section. I'm saving the negative section for last, but this is when software development is a pain in the ass. So similar to what we just talked about, just reverse it. Whereas it's really enjoyable to work in an environment where people care about the code and things are nice, but there's also many times where you're in a very, very terrible environment. And this is when you're scared of making changes, nothing is familiar, you don't really know how anything works, things are encapsulated way too much, the interfaces really suck, there's insane dependencies flying around, and you're scared. Like, you're literally scared of making any changes. I think out of all the measures of bad software or bad environment, it comes down to if you're really scared of making a change. When you're working in an environment, you should have control over it. You should be very comfortable in it and just know how to change something. You should know how to add a feature. If you're working in a project and you're actually scared of doing things, you just don't know what's going on, that's the sign of a pretty bad software project. So remember, there's two kind of parties involved in software. First, you have your users or your consumers or the people that receive your software, right? That's pretty much very easy to scale. That's the whole point of software. You write software once, you deploy it to billions of people with a click of a button. On the flip side of the users, you have the whole group of developers, and sometimes the developers don't scale. This actually happened at Qualcomm very often, right? Qualcomm had a bunch of different customers. Like, they had all these different customers, Apple, Samsung, HTC, BlackBerry, all these different customers. Instead of making their software design smart and be able to scale or at least replicate itself, all they did was literally duplicate teams per product line. So it's like software development team for Apple, software development team for Samsung. It was not a scalable operation inside the development. This is another way that environments can get kind of bad, is when companies, they don't really fix the core problem, which is software design, software patterns. They just throw people and money at a solution, right? And these days, there's so many developers out there. It's easy to just hire a team of 20 new developers for your product, but obviously they're not going to be really high quality developers. The last point I wanted to talk about for this section, where the not so good section, I just wanted to talk about a little bit more about the human aspect of software, all right? And this has been in the news recently, but as you guys know, the software community or environment or whatever, it's extremely sexism, elitism, and ageism. Unfortunately, you would like to believe that it's not true, but to be completely honest with ourselves, that stuff is completely true. Women engineers are looked down upon. If you're over 40, you're useless. There's elite people that live in Silicon Valley and go to Ivy League schools, but this stuff is just rampant in the community. There's no catch-all solution to solve problems like this. We can acknowledge those problems, that's the first step to do, but how do we actually solve those crazy human problems behind software? I can think about that for another video, but the one thing that I want to mention for this video is that the one thing you can do to protect yourself in all of this is that you still ultimately have the control over who you work with and where you work. Even two teams in the same company could be very different. Every company is different. Teams inside the company are all different, but at the end of the day, it's you who's making a job decision, right? At the end of the day, you go out, interview, get offers, and you will make your own decision of where you want to work. The best thing to do to protect yourself against some of this human stuff, like this crazy Uber sexual harassment, is that when you meet the people you're going to work with for the first time, do your best to check their integrity and their character and their transparency, all right? And this should just kind of be a gut feeling for you, but it's actually the only thing you can control. Whatever decision you use, whatever job you take, just measure, does this person have good integrity? And hopefully, if you take time to actually think about those thoughts, you're not going to put yourself into a really shitty software environment where everyone is like an asshole. All right, guys, to wrap up this video, I just want to say, remember, the whole purpose of this video, completely non-technical at all, is just kind of talking through some of my gut feelings about software these days. But the way media is portraying software development these days is like empowering, change your life, change the world, all right? But hopefully this video just gives a little bit of a more realistic perspective of what software development is like and what it really means. I know it's been blowing up, there's so much hype about it, so it's easy to think that like this is your savior or something, but you know, you have to make that decision for yourself. Maybe software is for you, maybe it's not for you, but don't believe all this hype. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave me a comment, like, subscribe, share something. Check out the link for this cool shirt from Code Addicts. Again, I wasn't paid to do that. They just were nice enough to send me this shirt, and I will see everyone next week. All right? Take care.